is September and it is fall, believe it or not. It's so crazy to think that we're already in September. But fall is usually a time that we start thinking about immunity because it is a time when, well, stuff starts to get kicked up. Flu season begins. There's higher incidence of like respiratory bugs. It seems funny to talk about it now since we are still in the midst of coronavirus, but there are still things that we can do to enhance our immunity. And I wanted to talk about some of the things that might be a little bit surprising, some things that you might not quite think of in regards to our immunity. And the first thing I wanted to say is that, you know, our bodies really have a very intricate and beautiful way to protect ourselves. Our organs are all geared up and lined up to protect our bodies against infection. And some examples are our skin. The skin is actually the largest organ in our body, and it's our first barrier of defense. Even areas in which there is a break in skin, like your mouth, for example, there's saliva that has enzymes that help kill bacteria and viruses. In your respiratory tract, when you breathe, there's mucus, of course, that helps trap bugs. That's the purpose of them. There are little hairs that are not only in our noses, but line our entire respiratory tract. So all those tubes, the breathing tubes like the trachea that go down into the lungs are all lined with these little hairs called cilia. And the function of these cilia, these little hairs, are to sweep out bugs and infection or invaders that can cause infection. So the body has a really is really set up to fight infection itself. But there are things that we can do to naturally enhance our immunity. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The first thing I want to talk about is social connection. Believe it or not, social connection, or connecting with other human beings, or connecting with nature, connecting with pets even, does enhance your immunity. Interesting fun fact is that social scientists believe that kissing is a precautionary measure. So it is believed that kissing allows for women to acquire some foreign invaders or foreign bugs and to test and enhance their immunity prior to becoming pregnant. So it's so interesting how some of our societal things are built into our health and our wellness. But you actually don't have to have physical connection in order to build your immunity. Of course, right now, our in-person connection is limited, but the studies show that socialization, even when it is with a phone call or through maybe a Zoom connection or something that is not face-to-face or close contact, does enhance your immunity, not only in the way that I discussed, but for example, your gut microbiome. So your gut is an area where we have a lot of bacteria, millions and millions of bacteria, and these bacteria actually help to do a lot of things, enhance our digestion. They're important for our metabolic health, and they're also important for our immunity. And we know that when you have connection, and social connection, that you can enhance that gut bacteria. And then our response to invaders. So when we have bugs or viruses enter our body, we have a system in our bloodstream, our white blood cells, and a whole host of infection fighting cells that get activated in order to fight off that infection. And when we're given a vaccine, that's actually what we're trying to elicit. We're trying to give our bodies a tiny dose of either the bug or something that looks like that bug in order to enhance an immune response. So an interesting study was done in college students in which they had students rate their loneliness or degree of loneliness on a scale, and they gave these college students vaccines and then tested their immune response. They tested the antibodies that the college students developed in response to this vaccine. And believe it or not, they showed that the college students who noted or reported the highest degrees or higher degrees of loneliness had a reduced response to the vaccine. So social connection is really something that's important. And I want to bring it up, especially right now, bring up the point that even though our face-to-face connections are limited, we can do it in other ways. And it really matters not only to our emotional well-being, but also to our immunity and to our physical well-being. The second thing I want to talk about is stress reduction. So our bodies are also geared up to feel stress. We have different aspects of our nervous system. We have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system that is the rest and relaxation part. And then we have the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight. And historically, the fight or flight part of our nervous system was triggered by like tigers and bears and like true danger, and eliciting that part of our nervous system will trigger us into quick action. Our eyes dilate so that we can see further and have a greater line of vision. Our heart rate goes up so that our blood starts pumping faster, providing oxygen to our muscles. Our breathing becomes more rapid, all so that we can run and get out of danger's way. But what happens when we have chronic stress? So stress is not supposed to be chronic. It's supposed to be given in short bursts in order to move us to action, to get out of harm's way. But what's happening right now is that stresses like financial worry, worry about our health, worry or frustration over our kids being home, over missing their usual activities, of trying to manage work from home and school from home. These things cause a constant surge of stress. And the way that that physiologically is transmitted is by a surge of cholesterol, a stress hormone. But constant cortisol, I'm sorry, I said cholesterol, didn't I? I meant another C word, a constant surge of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So what happens when we have this constant surge of cortisol is that we have this constant sympathetic response, heart rate up, blood pressure up, worry. And in fact, cortisol elevations will dampen our immune response. Prolonged cortisol can reduce our immune response. It actually reduces the ability of certain white blood cells, these are the infection-fighting cells, in order to gobble up the bacteria and also to release the proteins or cytokines, the proteins that help kill the bugs. So really constant cortisol and constant stress, which causes that cortisol elevation, is terrible, not only for our well-being, but also for our immunity. So what can we do? Because the stresses are there, the stresses are real, and they're not really going away, right? Stress never does. There's always something really to worry about. And if it weren't for all of this pandemic business, then there would certainly be something else that we would be fixated on and we would worry about in our own personal lives. So we can't eliminate stress, but what can we do in order to reduce stress or change our relationship or our response to stress? Well, for those of you who have listened to my other lives or podcasts or have read my newsletter, you can probably guess what I'm going to recommend and what I'm going to talk about, and that is mindfulness meditation. So it's really interesting that the father of mindfulness meditation, someone by the name of Jon Kabat-Zinn, was actually the son of an immunologist, somebody who specialized or had a specialty in immunology or the immune system. So interesting that that came to be. But mindfulness is essentially the practice of paying attention to the present moment in order to disengage from thoughts and feelings. So by focusing on what is happening right now in this moment, focusing on the breath, or for some people who get distracted by focusing on the breath, I know I do, you can focus on a specific place in your body by bringing your mind into your body or being embodied. you're taking your mind out of, well, your head, out of your thoughts. And that ability to disengage from the thoughts that are circling in your mind and come into your body brings about a sense of ease and well-being. It's interesting that they have actually studied mindfulness meditation in the setting or in regards to immunity. And they have found a few things. They found that people who practice mindfulness on a regular basis actually have a reduction in an inflammatory marker called CRP. CRP is a marker of inflammation that can go up in anybody's bloodstream as a sign that something inflammatory is happening, including infection, for example. So if we have a cold or an infection, then that CRP level will go up. Or if we have an inflammatory condition like an autoimmune condition that's flared up, CRP levels can go up. What's interesting is that they did a study in men who were going to the VA, VA men who were going to the YMCA and were engaging in a weekly practice of mindfulness meditation. And they monitored their CRP levels in the blood and found that independent of any other factor, like whether or not they were exercising or anything else, that their engagement in mindfulness meditation actually reduced that CRP level, that inflammatory marker. So it is super powerful to me to imagine that this blood marker of inflammation can actually be reduced in a practice of mindfulness meditation. Another study that was done was that they looked at the T cells. The T cells are a type of infection-fighting white blood cell in the blood, and found that in one particular study that people who were engaging in mindfulness meditation also had an increased number of T cells. So they had a greater ability to fight off infection. So this to me is really profound, crazy, mind-blowing data that shows a link between mindfulness and enhanced immunity. We also know that it can bring down cortisol levels and bring about a generalized feeling of ease and well-being. Blood pressure comes down, heart rate comes down. Those parts of the brain that are involved in emotional regulation, such as the amygdala and the hippocampus, these are parts of our brain that are, again, expressly involved in regulating our emotions, are enhanced when we do mindfulness meditation. And when people engage in this practice and they scan their heads in an MRI, they can see that those parts of the brain light up more fully. So evidence that you are actually, or you can actually activate the parts of your brain that help you regulate emotion in this practice. So that's a good tip. Helps with immunity and helps with emotional regulation. So the next thing I want to talk about is what we can eat, what we can put in our bodies that can help enhance immunity. And it's interesting that a lot of the foods that help enhance immunity are the ones that happen to pop up in the fall. So I'm going to talk about some of the nutrients that are necessary or that are shown to enhance immunity. The first is B vitamins. So B vitamins are available or are found in leafy green vegetables, all B vitamins except for B12, which is actually only found in animal protein. So for those vegans out there, you should supplement with a vitamin B12. Otherwise, you can get it through eggs, through chicken, fish, any kind of animal protein, milk. And then the other B vitamins, B1, B2, B6, you can get all of these through your leafy green vegetables. Another nutrient that has been shown to enhance immunity is zinc. Zinc can be found in foods such as spinach, garlic, salmon, and dark chocolate. If you decide to supplement zinc in a supplement form, keep in mind that too much zinc can have adverse effects. Zinc actually inhibits the absorption of iron and copper, two other nutrients that are involved in immunity. So be careful that you don't overdo it. This is one of the many places in which more is not better. If you're getting a supplement over the counter, make sure it is 25 milligrams or less, because you're getting this nutrient in the food that you eat. And then I want to talk about essential fatty acids. So fatty acids come in our food. Omega-3s come from fish. Omega-6 mostly comes from plant-based. But essential are the ones that you can't get through the diet and you have to supplement. Omega-3 fatty acids you get primarily from fish, fatty fish. Salmon is an excellent source. Tuna, cod liver oil is another source. And the recommended amount is 1,500 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids if you're not consuming 3 servings of fish per week. So I recommend at least 3 servings of fish per week, not only for immunity, but also for cardiovascular and metabolic health. Lots of data there. But if you're not getting it, then you can get a high quality supplement and supplement through that by getting about, or at least 1,500 milligrams a day. And then the last supplement I want to talk about is vitamin D. So there's vitamin D deficiency is uber common in the United States, even in areas like sunny California during the summer, and we do get vitamin D through sunlight. People are highly vitamin D deficient. In one Kaiser Southern California study, they showed that over 60% of Southern Californians in the summer are vitamin D deficient. So much less those of us who are in not so sunny parts of the country, or during the fall and winter seasons when we may stay indoors or the sunlight is not so abundant. So how much vitamin D should you get? This is also an area in which more is not enough. Too much vitamin D can be toxic and can actually do the reverse, can actually reduce our immunity. A great way to find out how much you need is by getting your vitamin D levels checked. It's something that all doctors can do, and many of us do on a regular basis. If you're not getting your vitamin D levels checked or haven't, I think it's fair to start with 1,000 to 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. I personally am taking 5,000 right now of vitamin D, even though I run out in the sun because my vitamin D levels were low despite that, and I required a higher amount. So start with 1,000 to 2,000 IUs and get your labs done so that you can determine whether or not you need more. Incidentally, there have been some studies that showed that higher vitamin D levels can be protective against COVID, so something that might be particularly relevant to this fall. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about adaptogens. I spent a lot of time talking about this on our last live last week, and you can scroll up to look for that video if you like. But adaptogens, so I'll just talk about it briefly, but adaptogens have a long history in many cultures, including in Chinese medicine, in India, and in Ayurvedic medicine. And they have been used to enhance or allow the body to adapt to stress, which is why they're called adaptogens. So some examples of adaptogens are turmeric, and another example is ashwagandha, which again, if you've been following me, you know it's my personal fave right now. I am using ashwagandha in our Del bar, in our cacao ashwagandha bar at very small doses, so it's okay for general consumption if you're having multiples. I also sell have the ashwagandha supplements in a higher amount, 500 milligrams in a pill form, which is also the other supplement that I take because not only does it help adapt the stress response and enhance immunity, but it also has mood enhancing benefits and can help minimize or help support a lower anxious state. And who can't, which of us cannot use less anxiety in our lives right now? So ashwagandha works in a few ways. One is that it can help buffer high cortisol levels, which is an interesting physiologic response. So that if people are in a chronic stress mode and have chronic cortisol elevations, it can help damper or buffer that elevation in cortisol. The other thing that it does is that it helps with sleep. Not in the same way as a sleep aid would, or like melatonin. So you don't have to take it right before bedtime in order to enhance your sleep. But again, by kind of buffering that stress response, adapting to that stress response, it enables your body to get more restful sleep, and it prepares your body for that restful sleep. So ashwagandha is another supplement that I highly recommend. So those are my tips. There are actually many more things we can do to help naturally boost our innate immunity, our natural response to infection. But the ones that we discussed, again, number one is social connection. Remember that enhancing connection, either face-to-face or otherwise, can help our gut immunity and our blood cells' ability to fight infection, as well as increase or enhance our response to vaccinations. The second thing that we talked about was stress reduction, and there's a lot of ways that we can engage in stress reduction. We didn't talk about sleep and exercise, all of which also boost your immunity, but we focused on mindfulness meditation, and there are so many great resources out there. I really love UCLA's MARC, Mindfulness Awareness Research Center, MARC. You can Google them. They have a free app and they have amazing classes. I've taken many of them. And the third thing we talked about was supplementing with supplements, but also with food. You can get your immune fighting vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients through whole food. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you guys got good information and enjoyed what you received. And I am wishing you a safe and fully immune fall. Feel free to leave me questions in the chat if you have any. Okay. Thanks, guys.